Okay, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Lauren Martin Clements, and I'm the head of marketing at Pipestream. Today, we have another installment of the Beyond the Bot series. In this series, we explore the often overlooked aspects of implementing digital assistants and chatbots. You'll hear from various members of our in house team of experts as they offer insights to enhancing customer engagement and streamlining operations. Today's webinar, titled Uncovering the Truth, Missteps, Assumptions, and Oversimplifications in CX Data Analysis, we talk about the common mistakes brands make when analyzing CX performance. Our CX expert today is none other than Reed Harris, our senior data analyst here at Pipestream. Reed has been at Pipestream for 3 years, and he's studied supply chain management, specializing in forecasting models at Kansas University, and holds several data science certifications. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Reed, for a bit of a presentation, and then we can open up for questions towards the end. I encourage you to send questions throughout, and let's get started.
Right on. I love it. I'm an expert. I
You
love
are. You really are an expert.
continue, keep going. While we've got an audience here. No, so okay, cool. So yeah, like Lauren said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some issues that when you're starting a chatbot project specifically, some kind of potholes that are really easy to fall in, so that you don't fall into them. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I've got a little presentation to give here, and we can see it fine.
Yep, we can see you.
Perfect. Okay. So uncovering the truth about what's happening in your chatbot. There we go. So the first thing I want to talk about, and because this is kind of has like the bulk of the missteps that I see or have made when I was a beginner in the analytics field. Self-reported satisfaction is something that almost every client I've ever worked with finds extremely valuable for obvious reasons. It's really hard to understand sentiment without using some really advanced AI, having plenty of user utterances. And the truth of the matter is, in a chatbot, oftentimes we're hoping for a very quick interaction without very much user buy-in. They don't really need to do too much to get done what they need to get done. And so these CSAT surveys are like the central source of truth of how the chatbot is performing for many of our clients. And so getting into that, I have a list of do's and don'ts. And these do's, I want to walk through them one at a time and give some examples for each one. So the very first thing that I find, probably the largest mistake that I find in giving customer satisfaction surveys would be the failure to delineate between the ease of use of the actual experience and the brand perception of you, the chatbot builder. So to give a really quick example of how that looks, instead of asking, how would you rate this from 1 to 5, end survey, that isn't really capturing what it is that they're ranking. So as an example, I've worked with a client once who they had a simple 5-star, how would you rate your experience? And then the survey was done. We had some low surveys coming in, and we wanted to understand why. Just by engineering the survey into 2 questions, one of them said, how easy was this chatbot to use today? And then, what is your overall perception of our brand? Those can be really disparate. We found that people were leaving 4s and 5s for their ease of use of the chatbot, but because they were angry about something that happened before their chat session ever started, their brand perception maybe has really low rating. So being able to look, when you bucket users by their CSAT scores, you want to be able to bucket them by the people who are happy or unhappy with the bot, and the people who are happy or unhappy with your brand, because that really is key to understanding your CSAT. The second bullet point there, saying bucket users by level of engagement. This is a little bit of almost like market segmentation just with the chatbot. So maybe not chatbot segmentation. The reason why is because there are certain use cases that involve a lot more engagement. And by engagement, I mean clicking through buttons or entering more free text, filling out forms. The more that you have to do, the higher the required engagement is. And so when you have users who have a quick, easy use case versus those who have to fill out 4 different forms, you need to understand the difference between them, because um, oftentimes just looking at an overall view doesn't tell you what to improve, right? And that's kind of the point of these insights, is to be actionable. They're really not actionable unless you're bucketing the CSAT scores by the type of session that's happening. So that's the second one. The third one, it very closely relates to the second one, customizing surveys for different use cases. And so just like I was talking about, not every session is the same. Some of them have a slightly simpler, more straightforward use case. Some of them have more complicated queries that really need potentially user live agent escalation if that's offered. And so giving a different type of survey for different types of sessions is really, really vital, because they just do different things. They need to be asked about their experience specifically, not just the broad experience that most users have. That one kind of goes really closely with number 2. The fourth one there is pretty basic. It's ensuring statistical significance. This is something that I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but take rates of CSAT in the chatbot industry, we see anywhere from 1 to 15%. So sometimes you can have a lot of users who are just not taking the CSAT, and if you have 17 responses from the last month, then you're just not going to get a good read on that. And so it seems like a really simple thing, but it's something that people really often overlook. And the last thing I would say is to consider, not necessarily do this. I put it last on the list because it's not a hard do, but I would consider matching the format of your survey to your chatbot provider's solutions for other clients. And the reason for this is I have lots of people that I help who say, okay, our CSAT is X. How does that compare to other people in our industry? Or the better question, if you watched our last webinar, is that comparing your CSAT across industry really isn't as effective as comparing your CSAT across similar use cases. You might not be in the same business vertical as, another chatbot, another company that has a chatbot, but if you both have extremely similar use cases, like here you can sign up, buy a product, or cancel your subscription. If those are the 3 use cases you have, then the better way to do it is to compare your CSAT with that solution. Well, obviously, you probably don't have access to all of those other solutions' CSAT scores, but your chatbot provider should. And if you want to compare your performance against the performance of a chatbot with similar use cases, then you need to have a somewhat matching format, or at least similar questions planted within that format. Otherwise, you really can't get apples to apples. And that's a big frustration for a lot of people who make a chatbot, make their own very customized, very thorough CSAT, and then they want to know how they compare, and they realize, oh my gosh, we built this in a way that we can't actually compare with any other CSAT. And so, one way of doing that would be to consider matching the format of your survey to the other solutions that your provider creates. So those are my 5 do's. Kind of extensive, but I think they're all really important to get good data. And I have a couple of don'ts now. I guess I'm a bit of an optimist because I have 5 do's and 2 don'ts. That's great, but fewer roadblocks, I guess. So do not allow users to submit default ratings. In a lot of web views out there, and we make a lot of our at Pipestream here, we make a lot of ours like in-house, we develop them. But if you're using some sort of pre-made web view or a lot of the default attributes of the things that you put in the web view, just naturally in the CSS or HTML, they might have a setting kind of where that has a default, like, so let's say it's a 5-star rating and you need to click on 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. A lot of them, that little view will start with 1 star already filled in, and you have to actually hover over it and click on a different star in order to give different feedback. Well, we find that people who aren't wanting to take the survey oftentimes just hit submit. And if you have a default 1-star rating and you have about half of your people entering the survey just hitting submit on whatever the default rating is, you can see how that really, really skews the data. So just be wary of, just pay attention to see, when I go through this chatbot, is there some default rating that I'm able to submit? Because what you want to do is make sure that that continue button isn't really clickable until you've manually selected a star rating. So that. It kind of seems simple, but it's one of those things that, like, if you don't know it going in, then you don't know it until you learn by experience. Another thing is, don't offer the survey to limited users. The reason why, it's just kind of a basic data principle that having more data isn't bad. I mean, unless you're dealing with really big data, but having big data or having a lot of data on your chatbot users, more than you actually need, is not a bad thing. It's better to later take that data and say, okay, we don't care about the CSAT for these 3 groups of users. We have a client that I was just helping this week, and they don't really care about the CSAT of the people who ask for careers. They come in and say, I want to work for you, to the chatbot, and the chatbot says, great, here's our careers page. That's all they want. They're not after the CSAT of job seekers. And so we can, or any data analytics, any data analyst can remove pieces of data before they do the analysis. And it's much better to do that than to cut off the availability of the data at the time that it's created. So that's just kind of a basic data engineering principle. And I would suggest not ever cutting out who gets the survey, because later you can cut out which pieces of data you actually analyze. So that is kind of a lengthy list around CSAT. Who knew customer satisfaction surveys could be so complicated? But these are all things that I think I personally have learned through experience, because they're not really articulated to analysts, and they're not articulated to people who want to build a chatbot. So I'm going to go on. That CSAT part was a large chunk of what I want to talk about today. There are a couple other things that I want to touch on, and one of them is agent workforce metrics. At Pipestream here, we offer our clients the ability to, we not only have the platform that the agents work on, and so we have but we also collect all that data and allow our customers to then staff their workplace effectively. And I created kind of a 3-step list to how you need to set up metrics and just analytics regarding your agent's performance. The first one is to define agent success. And so, for some people, what agent success looks like is making sure that everybody who talked to an agent was really helped and never had to call the contact center to get more help. For some people, they're just trying to churn quickly. They know that all of the when they have a wealth of information on their website, and the best thing is for the agent to figure out where they need to look to get their answer and refer them there, because they're not trying to have 30 agents just typing out all the contents that are on the website all day. So for some people, there's different ways to measure success for agents, and it depends on what your goals are. An example case would be, let's say you're building a chatbot that will take a product complaint. People may complain about the product, and we escalate them to a live agent. We may want those agents to have a low average handle time. We don't want them spending too much time with each client, and that's great. That would be a great metric. However, for a solution that's meant to generate sales leads and get taken to a live agent so that they can close the deal, short average handle times are not great. We want them to be nice and long. Build that communication, make sure that, as long as the deal goes through, that's all we care about. So really define what agent success is. I see people of all different industries with very different chatbots go, okay, what was average handle time? And it's just really not the best metric. And that goes into step number 2, which is to create a wide variety of metrics. Any single metric about an agent can be manipulated to make it look like they're doing a good job when maybe they're not. And so an example use case, like I was saying, is that average handle time. If you're measuring your agents just on how long they take, what we see when you do that is that agents start to say, oh my gosh, I've been on this chat for 2 minutes. I'm just going to end it without helping them because I see that one metric that matters is getting worse. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that average handle time down. If that means not helping the customer, then so be it. And so you have to really realize that your live agents are logical agents, and they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they're meeting the metrics that you've put out for them. And so making sure that you have not only average handle time, but you're looking at, you're differentiating that by how many people are handing off to maybe a specialty agent. Pardon me. We have here at Pipestream, we offer time in status, so you can see exactly how long someone sat idle, exactly how long someone was in a chat, how many concurrent chats they had at the same time, and a whole list of other metrics. You should be combining all those metrics to get a holistic view of agent performance and not just settling for one metric. And step 3 would be to continuously revisit specializations. So we have a few streaming services providers as a use case, and these streaming services obviously have a huge spike of interest in NFL programming toward about this time of the year. It makes sense for them to seasonally staff a whole bunch of agents who can just help troubleshoot, why can't I see this NFL game? And they're very trained in just that question, and you can throw 15 of them, on your workforce for a month, and that can massively help not lose CSAT when you have a big seasonal change in something. So different specializations of agents need to be continuously monitored to make sure that right now it makes sense to have those specializations and in those numbers. And so I know we're getting kind of close to the 20 minutes. I'll go really quickly through this last part. And this is just tricky metrics. Now, this is things that we all learned in probably 6th grade math. I remember Mrs. Ramsey teaching us about averages and medians. But honestly, as adults, we haven't been in 6th grade for a long time, and we just kind of forget about these things. And so putting words to them can actually be very preventative in bad data. I would say be wary of a few things. One of them is outliers and averages. If you don't remember what average versus a median is, totally understandable. Google it before you make a chatbot because I see so many people ask for averages in data sets that they don't realize have huge outliers. I'm going to show you a graph in just the next slide to show you exactly how that works. Give us all a refresher on that. The next thing is something that I mentioned earlier with getting statistical significance in your data, small sample sizes. I've seen a number of organizations go, oh, look, 17% of people were asking for this. And then I look and there's exactly 7 users in that sample size. So what you're saying is we know that 1 person out of 10,000 asked for this. Small sample sizes don't do. Spurious correlations, when 2 things rise together, does it make sense that one is causing the other? Or is it just a random correlation? And last thing would be the sampling bias. This is especially important with CSAT because generally people who are really angry or really happy are going to leave a CSAT. And so you just have to keep in mind that you're not necessarily getting a full randomness. So that kind of brings it to a close. The last thing I want to do is just show you a graph of something that, again, we all probably saw in middle school, but it's so important to understand in descriptive statistics. This is an example of a client that I was servicing and speaking to just about a month ago. They were concerned why their dashboard said that the average handle time of a chat is 8.5 minutes. So when you look at this graph, you can see that the average I'm not sure. Hey, Lauren, can you see a red circle over here on my screen, or is my face covering it up?
Your face might be covering it, but I
Okay.
can move your face. Hang
Oh,
on one
hey,
second.
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So they were looking at their average handle times and they were going, oh my gosh, 8-minute handle times, 9-minute handle times. Why are these averages so high? We were hoping people would get in and out in a couple minutes. Well, if you look at this distribution of how long people are taking, if you look at the average of 8 minutes, actually very few people are taking 8 minutes. So that's a really bad number. The reason why that average is so far off is because of these few people who, for some reason have a really long chatbot session, just a few little people pulling it out. You can see that using the median would be a much more effective way of measuring how long the bulk of users are spending. And so, again, it seems so simple, but it's something that if you don't think about, you will fall for it, just like everybody else. So, that concludes kind of the missteps and oversimplifications that I see on a regular basis and the things that I've learned just in my experience. So, yeah, I hope that that was helpful to everybody and that when
Yeah.
you start your own chatbot experience, you can, capitalize on that.
Absolutely. That was great. Thank you, Reed. We have some questions coming through. So I'm going to start with the most relevant one from that chart you were just showing. So the question is, for those two extras there at the end, do you then take the extra step of kind of looking into why those things took a long time, or do you just consider them outliers and kind of just throw them out?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on what the client wants. Generally, I in this type of question, I'm asking why are chatbots because in a really good system, it would kick you out after a little while, and
Right.
ours does that. And so, I, when it depends on what you're trying to understand. If you're just looking for median and average, I would just throw them out. And
Hmm.
when a client proposes an average to be like on their chatbot or something, I let them know that I'm removing outliers for that number. I'm removing any chat sessions that were over an hour.
Hmm.
And so I generally just kind of throw them out unless there's like a significant enough number to really matter. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good question.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. So then the next one is, are there certain metrics that you think are best for tracking agent performance over others? Like, could you rank like your top four best
Yeah,
metrics?
yeah, I would say one of the first things is just the first response time. Nobody likes getting an agent and then waiting 2 minutes for them to actually type something.
Yeah.
I would say another one is probably paying attention to handoffs and making sure that when that first agent gets it, if they need to transfer to a more specialized agent, that they're correctly identifying those. That's a little bit harder to measure because you kind of have to look through the transcripts and understand if they're getting transferred correctly. But that can really help because if you're seeing certain specialties really overwhelmed, the immediate answer isn't necessarily staff up more people in that specialty. The first thing you want to do is make sure that people who are being transferred to that specialty are the ones that need to go there. So looking at their handoff tendencies, I think is really important. Um, Other than that, I would say just basic CSAT after a agent conversation because nobody's going to tell you better if the customer was helped or not than the customer. So I would say those are probably my top three that I find to be kind of faithful predictors of agent. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, that was excellent. Thank you again for your time, Reed. Anybody, if you have extra questions, other things you want to ask, please feel free to send those in via LinkedIn or YouTube, depending on where you're watching. And next month, I think it's our final installation of our data series with Reed. So hopefully you'll tune in then. We usually do them the third Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. All right. Thanks again, Reed, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.